Welcome to Focal Points. Today, our special guest is Jim Lee. He is the expert when it comes to geoengineering. So, Jim, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and what you've done in the past few decades?
Well, I've been a anti-geoengineering, anti-weather modification activist for better part of 20 years now. Self-taught on all this. If I can do it, you can do it. Um, Start small, get big. And I specialize in creating resources where you don't have to listen to, me run on ad nauseum. You can learn at your own pace. So what I did was I've created three separate websites for people to be able to, do some self-learning. All of that's available at connect.climateviewer.com. If you go over there, you'll see Climate Viewer News on climateviewer.com, weathermodificationhistory.com, the number one source on the entire internet to learn about this, complete with 1,181 geoengineering and weather modification patents, 800 newspaper articles, and an interactive timeline from 1850 to present of everything going on in the weather over your head. And finally, Climate Viewer Maps on climateviewer.org, a 3D globe that you can spin around and look at things like HARP facilities, like ionospheric heaters, weather modification projects worldwide, and the list goes on. Over 600 maps, including real-time satellite feeds, weather, fire, volcanoes, and all that fun stuff. I have a Climate Viewer report on Substack. You can sign up for the newsletter, join my Telegram chat, and watch all my social medias, videos, and stuff at Climate Viewer on all the things. And if you love what I'm doing, you can support me by going to the bottom of the page, and that's on connect.climateviewer.com. But this is what I specialize in, is creating something that's very easy for people to navigate through so that they can understand the entire history of weather control. And like for an example, if you wanted to know about Operation Popeye and weather warfare in Vietnam, a typical post looks like this. You're going to have a whole bunch of information on it. Each one of these, if it has a reference, you can click it. It'll take you down to the bottom. You can see this is referencing the Pentagon papers. If you click right here, it'll take you right back to the article. Highlight where you left off, keep reading. There's the actual patches from Operation Motor Pool, and all that. When you get past the references section, which all of these are references for it, this is one of the most cited pages on my website. It's been cited in probably 20 different countries around the world. Their governing bodies have cited this page, and then you can go through the gallery and just flip through and actually see the equipment that they used for it, the planes that were used to do it, who all was involved, like Jack Anderson, the reporter, Claiborne Pell, the senator who held hearings on this. See the original Pentagon papers that broke the news about the weather warfare right there. And then see all of the newspaper articles that came out at the time, all in one timeline entry, so that people can understand the true history of weather modification and weather warfare, geoengineering, and space weather modification. So all of these are open source, free to download. And that was the purpose of making this website, is to just give you an overwhelming amount of evidence. Nobody will ever, and I promise you, I haven't even made it through it yet, but nobody will ever get through Dominic, my brother from another mother up in Canada, his newspaper article archive with over 800 newspapers. And when you start scrolling through these, you will see things like producing rain with x-rays in 1919. And you can just you can just start flipping through these. These are all from 1919, and then we get to
So
1921.
it's existed for a century, it seems.
Right. This is
Geoengineering.
electrified sand being sprayed out of a biplane to try to alter the weather. So, is rainmaking riddle solved? And there's the biplane, not a drawing, but an actual photo of one. So when you start going through this, it's amazing that people don't know the lengthy history of weather modification. And so I built this web page specifically to break apart from, what are my ideas, like my personal beliefs, which are on my blog, climateviewer.com, and give people the tools. So like you can come to this patent thing, you can type in hurricane, and bam, it's going to show you hurricanes. Then you can click on them, and then you can actually see, like, here's the patent numbers, when they were filed, what the devices look like, and all of that. And any one of these you click on, it'll take you straight over to Google, and there's the method to prevent formation of hurricanes and typhoons by reducing sea surface temperature of the oceans. And I don't just have the US patents, I have all of them worldwide. So this is what I specialize in, is like, I do have a photographic memory. I remember everything I read. So then I go and I take it and I try to organize it for other people so that they can get educated on the subject. So that's what the purpose is. And then I create a frequently asked question page for each type. So like space weather modification, like HARP. If you don't know what HARP is, the high frequency active auroral research program up in Gacona, Alaska, you can come here. What is space weather modification? It'll tell you. And then I have PowerPoint presentations where you can download them. Me explaining the PowerPoint presentation. If you're too lazy to click the button, hey, I'm cool with it. I'll do a video and I'll read it for you and explain it. How Lyndon Johnson said, control of space means control of the world. From space, the masters of infinity would have the power to control Earth's weather, to cause drought and flood, to change the tides and raise the levels of the sea, to divert the Gulf Stream and change temperate climates to frigid. Did he just say he could make the sea rise? I thought that was because of global warming, man. Are you pulling my leg? So, then I have like frequently asked questions. What is an ionospheric heater? You can click, like literally click here, and don't fail me. Now, what kind of, I don't know what that was. What is this? Let's try that again. Don't mess with me, bro. So this actually will take you directly over to Climate Viewer 3D and bring up the HARP facility. And as you can see, it's on a beautiful round 3D map. You can scroll down to the ground and actually look at the facilities. You can click on here. Each one of these is like a map that shows you a mini web page that tells you all about that single dot. You can see the engines that power the HARP facility. You can see the heads up display where they actually control the entire thing. When I nerd hard.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy. So this is literally a Google Earth, but of all of the geoengineering facilities. Now, Jim, tell us, because our audience might not be aware of all the various types of geoengineering. So you mentioned HARP, and then we have all the other methods of changing climate. Why don't you tell us about all those methods, and then we'll kind of expand from there.
Yeah, so I typically break it down into three categories. There's weather modification, there's geoengineering, and there's space weather modification. Now, weather modification happens in the troposphere. What do I mean by troposphere? Well, let's start there. So the troposphere is where all weather occurs that we experience. So whether it's puffy cumulus clouds or stratus clouds or cirrus clouds, all of that happens from about here on the ground to about 39,000 feet. Now, this does vary from the equator to the North Pole. The closer you get to the North Pole, the lower this dotted line is called the tropopause. It is the dividing line between the troposphere and the stratosphere. So on the ground, there are ground-based cloud seeding generators. What do I mean by ground-based cloud seeding generator? Well, I mean this thing right here. So when you look at these, all of these fire icons you're seeing are ground-based cloud seeding generators. And typically, and I can actually make this 3D real quick, make it look kind of cool. All right, now we got mountains, so I can come down here and actually show you the mountains. And you can see that this is in a mountain range. And generally speaking, these cloud seeding generators use something called orographic lift, meaning the wind comes over, hits the cloud seeding generator, and then carries the silver iodide up on top of the mountain. That is called snowpack augmentation. Okay. So just in the state of Colorado, there are all of these, which is nothing to shake a stick at. And for those who are curious, because I like to have receipts, where'd you get this from, Jim? Did you make this up or are you just pulling my leg? No, it came from, I believe that's the Colorado Water something board in colorado.us. So from this PDF, I pulled this map that showed where their active cloud seeding generators are. So it says right here, these are manual, these are remote. And what is the difference between a manual and a remote? That's the difference. One is a remote and it's high tech. It's got its own solar panel. It's got like a cell connection to it, and they can just remotely turn it off and on. And a manual cloud seeding generator, I like to call the redneck version, is where grandpa goes out and literally flicks a bic and lights the top of a acetone and propane filled bottle and then ignites a silver iodide head. That's what's called snowpack augmentation. So these are all ground-based cloud seeding generators. All of the ones that you see are cloud icons. These are precipitation enhancement experiments. If I actually go up here, you can see the NOAA. You have to report to the government if you're going to do cloud seeding projects. So whenever I come to these, you can actually click this and then go to each one individually and see that it'll tell you on there the state of Nevada project, who's the funder, and then it's a state, Nevada. What did they do? 3,000 square miles. The operator was Desert Research Institute. They're the ones that actually did the weather modification. The sponsor who paid for the weather modification was Southern Nevada Water Authority. Purpose, snowpack augmentation. Why? I got a mountain icon there. So I try to make these easy to follow along with, and you can actually see the government reports on weather modification activities by doing that. And you can just, basically click through these and just read them, and they'll tell you precipitation enhancement, what year they happened, all of that. So when you zoom out and you look at the whole world real quickly, you see that that's a lot of weather modification. Now, these are all from the World Meteorological Organization. Almost all these that say H, they're hail suppression. So now we've got three categories. We've got precipitation enhancement. We want to make it rain. Snowpack augmentation. We want to make snow on top of mountains. That way in the springtime they melt. And then we have hail suppression. And this is the idea of sprinkling silver iodide into a cloud in order to make hail smaller. In most cases, these are paid for by insurance companies like MSI Guaranteed Weather. So Guaranteed Weather is an insurance company that takes money from farmers, like here in, the Nebraska, that area. And then they go and they say, hey, you know what? Western Kansas Groundwater paid Western Kansas Groundwater Management. Oh, they pay for it and they do it themselves. Just like in Idaho, all of the cloud seeding generators in Idaho are operated by Idaho Power Company, which you can see right here, Idaho Power's cloud seeding projects. So it's different on a state by state basis. It's different based on where you are in the world. And if you're talking about China, it pretty much is all military. So the Chinese military does it. Here is the Tibetan Plateau, where China is putting 100,000 cloud seeding generators.
Why?
Yeah. Because they don't have much water up here, and they want to get water from here to bring up here. So this has caused a whole lot of regional conflicts because you've got the Ganges, you got the Brahmaputra, and all of these other major rivers that come off of the the Tibetan Plateau. Well, this has actually led to armed conflict between China and India over China damming up rivers that are coming off the Tibetan Plateau that would have gone into India. In fact, they used directed energy weapons and cooked the clothes right off the Chinese, off the Indian military.
Oh,
I have a photo of that Chinese directed energy weapon gun, but this ain't that show. Um, so weather warfare is water warfare is the blue gold rush. This is, while everybody's talking about climate change, very few people want to actually focus on the bigger issue, and that is that we are in this like water crisis mode, and that water is life. So retired Colonel David Kaczynski very famously said, water will be to the next century what oil was to the last century. And that's a really creepy thought. But so we have all these states that are currently banning weather modification and geoengineering. That's two of the three categories. The third category, space weather modification, I guess I should have left that up for one little good example of that, and I'll just throw it back up there real quick. It's still on the screen. So space weather modification. Let's clear some of this stuff out because I got way too much stuff on the screen at this point. At least
let me say this. So when CNN says geoengineering is fake and not real, people can just go on your website and see it's existed for a century, and it's basically all over the world with ongoing operations.
This is where terminology really, meets the road. Like there's a lot of people who get very confused about the terminology. And geoengineering has become a catch-all phrase that means pretty much all of the things. So like all the things, whether it's stratospheric aerosol injection, whether it's chemtrails, contrails, or aviation-induced cloudiness, ground-based cloud seeding generators, cloud seeding planes with flares. People call that geoengineering. They call all that geoengineering. In reality, this, and this are weather modification. This and this are geoengineering. That's really interesting. And you have to know why they are geoengineering in order to really understand what the technology is and what they intend to do with it. Geoengineering seeks to alter the temperature of the planet. So the reason I was talking about snowpack augmentation, precipitation enhancement, hail mitigation, those are all done with these ground-based systems or these planes burning flares. Now, ground-based cloud seeding generators like this one right here, this is called an AHOGS tree. It's a flare dispensing tree. I can zoom in on that if you want to really see it. But that tree right there is just a bunch of flares on a tree that can just pop off one at a time. And it's just an automated dispensing system. This is a cloud ionizer. It doesn't use chemicals, it uses electricity. So the cloud ionizer, instead of releasing silver iodide, it would release negatively charged ions. So basically, it's using pollution and aerosols that are already in the air to attract moisture onto pollution that's already there to make rain. It's a much cleaner version of weather modification. It's still weather modification. Lasers can be used for weather modification. You can make rain with lasers. You can also steer lightning bolts with lasers. Laser lightning rods. But then there's one type of geoengineering called marine cloud brightening. This happens on the ground also because it happens on the ocean. It just recently happened in San Francisco on the USS Hornet, where they were spraying some sea salt into the air. They didn't warn the people of San Francisco. They got really big mad about it. They ended up banning the thing. That was geoengineering from the ground. Another example of geoengineering from the ground would be literally painting your rooftop white. It reflects light. So we have to be specific about these terms, because if we don't understand what we're talking about, if we want to actually be an activist and you want to do something about it, then you got to understand the terminology. You got to understand where, when, and why. So
tell us what should we? So what's everybody talking about? So everybody's talking about, right? They look up in the sky, they see these contrails, or what some people claim are chemtrails, and they say they're spraying stuff out of the back of the planes. They have nozzles. Some people say it's jet fuel, or there's stuff in the jet fuel. So I guess so. Some of that stuff seems at least somewhat benign, right? It's not going to cause any catastrophic effects. It's not going to poison people either. Tell us what will poison people, and what are people seeing in the sky when they look up and they see these ever expanding contrails?
Well, the first thing that really sticks out to me is that most people say this is completely new. I don't remember seeing this. I remember blue skies. This might shock you a little bit. So this is from my interactive timeline. For those that want to know how to find this very easily, you just just click timeline up here, scroll down, and you can sort by the categories: geoengineering, weather modification, or space weather modification. So like these are all the space things, like HARP, all the different things. HARP creates plasma clouds, you know, the charged aerosol release experiment, steering thunderstorms with solar powered satellites, space based stuff. Okay. But in the weather modification category, you got weather warfare and stuff like that. And in the geoengineering category, you have things like Mexico bans geoengineering. I'm just going to turn them all on and I'm going to hit show tags. And if I click artificial clouds, that is only about my chemtrails. So all of these are just posts only about the clouds we're seeing and things that have happened, or crazy things they talk about doing with the clouds in the air. So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. Most people don't understand these two things right here are really, really creepy. So contrail cirrus complaints begin nationwide 1948. I'm going to revise this. We actually found planes making contrails back in 1912. One of my admins in my Telegram chat, by the way, on any one of my websites, you can just go up here to where it says subscribe, and all of that's there. Substack, Telegram, the videos, the socials, donate, and cool new merch coming soon. So this is what really, really got me. I couldn't even believe this when I first found it. And here are the actual links to the original newspapers. And I had a lot of people say, oh, but Google just made this up. They're rewriting history. I actually had three different times, three separate newspapers. I had people who were local go verify themselves. Was this is this in the microfiche? Can you go to your local library or something? Tell me that this is real or not. Unedited. These are all legit. Jet trails, dim sun, Palm Springs gripes, 1958. So this is literally December 6, 1958. And they say the contrails are not disappearing, but are breaking down into a haze and creating a cloud-like appearance. With the unlimited expanse of barren, uninhabited land in the west, does such activity have to be centered over a resort area, which is offering the visitor cloudless skies and unlimited sunshine? The Air Force so far is flabbergasted. December 6, 1958. Wait for it. The craziest freaking headline you will ever see on any newspaper ever. Air Force gives village two choices: live with the trails or move.
Man,
you cannot make this crap up. And just for those who don't know how big these images are, we're talking they're this big. Okay, that's 100% zoom. So you can actually come down here and zoom through this, and you can very clearly see that now that I'm at 100% zoom, that's how big these images are. They just get put in a little shadow box. So if you want to download them and then zoom around and read the whole thing yourself, you can. But I'm just going to read you the important part because it's right here. Let's face it, men, said a crisp talking star-studded general. You'll either have to live with the vapor trails or move the city of Palm Springs. The resort area, it appears, is known as the Palm Springs intersection. the freeway interchange of all West Coast aerial traffic. So the city officials and civic leaders, in an apparently unanimous, unspoken agreement, decided that a peaceful coexistence with the Air Force was the wisest course. So let me get this straight. In 1958, they were already, and of course, this is a recurring theme. 1960, U.S. jet planes will lose their vapor trails soon. They were called vapor trails up until about 1980. It's rare that you see the word contrail used back in the 40s through 1980. It's mostly referred to as vapor trails, occasionally referred to as smoke pollution of the sky. It's very interesting. So here's an example of a city that is, based on tourism, and they're telling, the military, we don't like, what's going on with these clouds blocking out the sun. We're a tourist destination. They're like, bro, there's highways in the sky and they all cross right over your city. Tough titty, I mean,
So these clouds, they've been around. They've been around since the 50s.
Now, here's the really weird part. Now I'm going to flip the script on you. U.S. Navy creates and destroys clouds using carbon black. This is Dr. Florence Van Straten. Now, Navy scientist creates clouds, breaks them up. September 1958. Same year, same time. Oh, by the way, China Lake, California, Naval Weapons Center. So this is the U.S. Navy, and it said, we dropped carbon black suspended in a liquid over a track a mile long and produced a solid line of clouds 1 mile long, Dr. Van Straten said. When we dropped 1.5 pound dry packages of carbon black, we produced single clouds with each drop. The Navy team seeded 7 clouds with carbon and dissipated each of them in from 2.5 to 20 minutes. Each cloud turned gray and then rapidly disappeared. Dr. Van Straten said, aside from the cost of the airplanes, we spent less than $5 on the experiments in Georgia. So the U.S. Navy was able to create clouds on demand. Here's some other articles to back that up. Carbon black controls clouds. This is October 6, 1958. Navy creation destroys clouds. Ordinary carbon black is used. September 23rd, 1958. Lady meteorologist toys with clouds to seek tranquilizer for bad storms. Now, this is the U.S. Navy. Okay? So, what we have to really understand is the difference between what's called carbon black and black carbon. And that's why I do these PowerPoint presentations. So down here at the bottom, I did a special PowerPoint presentation to really break it down for people. And that way they could understand what is the difference. Like, why is I've got my Zoom on. Maybe that's screwing it up. Nope, I just screwed up my website again. This is what happens when you make your own website. Doing a little bit of hacking as we speak. And delete element now that you're out of my way and stop ruining my show. I can bring that up to full screen. And you can see in the PowerPoint presentation, I basically make the difference between what is carbon black dust versus soot. Carbon black is one thing, black carbon is another. So soot, jet exhaust, is black carbon. Carbon black is manufactured. It's different. They have different chemical properties. They're made different ways. So understanding that, you can pretty much break it down like this. Military use for carbon black, carbon black, military use, increase cirrus cloud cover, decrease precipitation. They can create drought with carbon black dust, dissipate fog, scientific community, hurricane modification with carbon black dust, decrease precipitation, make it rain, make it drought, increase cirrus cloud cover. That's what we're seeing from planes overhead. And all of this is easily provable. So I'm just going to whip through to the important parts because We won't get into self-levitating, soot and all that, and what Harry Wexler warned about with the rocket exhaust, and how soot gets transferred into the stratosphere. We'll deal with that probably a little later. But we already covered this one, and this one. But basically, the presidents had talked about this. We want cooperative efforts between all nations and on weather prediction and eventually weather control. JFK. He said it. I've got the video of it. And determine the world's cloud layer with Lyndon Johnson. But 2 states actually sued over black belch and cirrus clouds. They called it smoke pollution of the sky. The government will tell the nation's 43 commercial airlines Tuesday that they must end pollution of the skies with jet engine smoke by 1972 or face punitive legislation from Congress. So Illinois and New Jersey sued the airline industry over what they called pollution of the sky with jet engine smoke. Terminology. I swear it always changes. Somebody's always going to use some different words. This was a paper on the possibility of weather modification by aircraft contrails. And they said that it's likely contrails are affecting precipitation to a greater extent than present deliberate cloud seeding operations, the ones we were just talking about with the planes that people pay money for.
Well, wait, let me clarify here. So carbon black and soot. So are either of these present in all commercial aircraft?
Soot is. Carbon,
soot is. Okay,
black carbon. Every time you burn jet fuel, you end up with soot.
Okay.
So the carbon black dust was proposed as a solution for, they called it carbon aerosol particles with around 100 nanometers or less to steer hurricanes. I'm just going to get to the really cool ones here at the end, and we'll just summarize with this. I have Freedom of Information Act requests from both the U.S. Air Force here, weather modification using carbon black, 1994 FOIA. So it didn't go away from 1958 to 1994. And at China Lake, non-lethal warfare proposal weather modification. And they go on to talk about using carbon black dust there as well. Then there was the Owning the Weather in 2025 documents where they had a chart of what they would do in the future. And right here it says CBD. And no, they're not talking about cannabinoid oils. They're talking about carbon black dust. With the star next to it, technologies to be developed by Department of Defense. But then came the guy, Dr. Arnold A. Barnes Jr. at the Weather Modification Test Technology Symposium 97 from the U.S. Air Force Phillips Laboratory at Hanscom Air Force Base. And what did he say? He said weather modification using carbon black for all the wrong reasons, like making floods to dry out roads, fields for improved tractability, deny fresh water to troops in semi-dry regions. That sounds like weather warfare to me. And then he said the quiet part out loud. Increase cirrus cloud cover. That is what we're seeing in the sky. Whether you call it a chemtrail or a contrail, once it fans out, it is neither a chemtrail nor a contrail. It is a cirrus cloud. Cirrus clouds matter. So what do the military say they want to do cirrus clouds for? Deny visual satellite and high altitude reconnaissance. Decrease light level for nighttime operations. Block out the moon over the battlefield so the Iraqi Republican Guard can't see us and we have night vision goggles. Create infrared defeated clouds that block out China's spy satellites so that we can roll the SR-72 out on the runway at Area 51 and fly it underneath the clouds and nobody can ever see it. Straight from the military's mouth, straight from army.mil, pulled off of archive.org. This does not exist on the internet except for on my webpage and on Wayback Machine. I even go digging through Wayback Machine to go find all of these things. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about, jet fuel and how it creates clouds, people would just tell you, well, no, it's just harmless water vapor. Contrails are harmless water vapor. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, ideally, this is your combustion. This is what, in a perfect world, if everything went right, this is what ideal burning jet fuel should end up being. But in reality, you end up with CO2, H2O, N2, O2, NOx, HC plus CO plus C soot. C soot is black carbon. So right there, they're showing you the black carbon plus SOx, that's sulfur dioxide, that's basically sulfur. So when you follow the chart, direct emissions, sulfur and soot end up having microphysical interactions, which lead to aerosol creation and cloud creation. Clouds and aerosols, that equates to some climate change. The impacts are agriculture, forestry, ecosystems, energy production and consumption, social effects, like people losing their freaking minds online about planes making clouds. They just call it social effects. I think that's kind of cute. And then damages, welfare loss, e.g., monetary units. Yeah, we lose money because planes make clouds. So, of course, when the chemtrail people came for me, and I'm just over here minding my business trying to save the world from geoengineering, they said, "Well, what about my aluminum? What about my barium?" And I was like, "All right, let me look for some aluminum and barium." What did I find? All right, here, JP5, 2,100 parts per billion of aluminum in JP5. In JP8, 9,300 parts per billion. Calcium, in the geoengineering world, it's sulfur, aluminum, titanium, calcium, titanium, diamond dust. There are 5 chemicals. Almost 95% of peer-reviewed science on geoengineering revolves around 5 chemicals: sulfur, aluminum, calcium, titanium, and diamond dust, in that order. Sulfur is number 1, always will be, because that's what volcanoes do. So when I went looking for it, I was surprised to find that aluminum, barium, all the things were already in here. Strontium, yeah, they got that. That's in the jet fuel. And this particular thing, this came from the military. It said not detected on aluminum. That's Jet A. Jet A is what commercial flights predominantly use. But I've got other sources that say otherwise, which is kind of interesting. But you just look down the chart, and when you hear calcium, most people wouldn't even think of calcium. I've never heard a single chemtrail person or geoengineering person on the entire internet, other than me, even mention calcium, because they don't know it's even a thing. Hell, they don't even know it's a metal. Let's be real. They think it's just good for your teeth. But calcium is a metal, bros. 555 parts per billion Jet A, 5,200 parts per billion in JP5, and 31,000 parts per billion in NATO JP8. So when NATO had the single fuel concept and they switched from JP4, which is not listed here, gasoline, to JP8, which is kerosene, the numbers jumped dramatically all the way down the board of the amount of metals that were in the sky. It is I don't think that it's a coincidence that every single NATO country switched jet fuel. And suddenly in 1997, the first article about chemtrails was written. In 1999, William Thomas appeared on Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, did about 5 episodes in 1 year talking about chemtrails. Now, he was focused on ethylene dibromide at the time. Aluminum and barium didn't come till later on. But if you don't actually know the history of who all was, coming up with these ideas about chemtrails, then you really don't, know the history of how a narrative can shift over time. So I just look at the numbers. I look at, the facts, where they all line up, crazy ideas like Boulder, Colorado's hurricane modification workshop for the Department of Homeland Security. There's your DHS saying we're going to use carbon black dust to steer hurricane. Now, the point of all this is just to kind of just overwhelm you with the ideas of we want to do contrail control. Why? Because a single contrail operating in conditions favorable for persistent contrail formation appears to exert a contrail-induced radiative forcing some 5,000 times greater than recent estimates of the average persistent contrail radiative forcing from the entire civil aviation fleet. Let me translate that to redneck. We were making our IPCC models and we made a guess about what we thought as these clouds that are being made by planes, how much heat they blocked or trapped on the earth. We were so wrong that it was 5,000 times worse than what a single plane was 5,000 times worse than what we thought every plane in the entire world was doing. And that's shown by this animated GIF. Right here, you see these circles. That is an E3 Sentry AWACS radar plane. It is the only plane in the air because there's a volcanic eruption that just occurred. And because it was circling, it created all those clouds that covered almost all of Great Britain by itself. That's one plane. There are no other planes up there. They are all grounded. And this was part of what was called COSIC, a study into the radiative effects of that E3 AWACS right there. Contrails spreading into cirrus. So once you understand that, we can really have a conversation about cirrus clouds are greater than greenhouse gases. That's where we're really at. They're still keeping this narrative, but they're not telling the truth that contrails formed by aircraft can evolve into cirrus clouds indistinguishable from those formed naturally. These spreading contrails may be causing more climate warming today than all the carbon dioxide emitted by aircraft since the start of aviation. Now, I gave this testimony on this jet biofuel for contrail control, what they call sustainable aviation fuels, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Farm to Fly program, the idea that they would grow, just like they do with your gas tank, ethanol in your gas tank. Up to 10% ethanol is in this gas that's going in your car. That's made from corn, people. Same thing here. They want to put corn in your jet fuel. They want to use Jatropha plant, Camelina plant. These are called oilseed crop plants. Or that's through what's called HAFA or Fischer-Tropsch, where they use like landfill waste, CO2, chicken fat. The list goes on and on. These are all the different types of, feedstocks and how they go about making, like with HAFA and FT over here. It can come from coal, natural gas, lipid-based fuels like camelina, algae. I mean, it's Frankenstein fuel. So if they're going to use Jatropha plant, for example, Jatropha biodiesel came from the crushed seeds of the Jatropha plant, water, and a surfactant, then blended in different proportions of aluminum nanoparticles. Why? It's like putting an octane booster in your muscle car. The aluminum is actually a octane booster for these weak soy, like a soy boy, jet fuel. So then it says, and I love this, nanoparticles should be used judiciously because they tend to entrain into human bodies. No worries though. This is our plan. This is from 2011, guys. This is like old news.
So they're adding turbo boosts, like magic nitro juice from Crash Bandicoot into their jet fuels, and it's basically these nanoparticles that disperse down onto the surface and get into humans.
Yeah, pretty much. So I went and basically the Obama administration, while Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were duking it out, they tried to regulate greenhouse gas emissions coming out of airplanes. And they were using the Clean Air Act to do it. And I got wind of this and I wrote in and I said, I would like to have a hearing. I want public comment on this. And I actually got a phone call from the senior policy analyst, Lucy Audette at the EPA, tried to talk me out of it. And I would have none of that. And I also recorded the phone call, then put it up on my YouTube channel, which is absolutely hilarious. If you ever want to hear somebody beg, I've got that phone call for you. So then they had to announce that there was going to be a hearing. I brought some of my friends, Amanda Bays, Patrick Roddy, Max Bliss, and a gentleman named Michael Saraceno I met on Twitter at the time. He's like, hey, can I come too? And I'm like, sure. The more, the merrier. All the NGOs are going to show up. So let's at least have like 5 people who are going to say something different. And we all had our different narratives. Mine focused on, why don't we deal with the metal particles coming down from the sky and cloud creation? That was my big one. Why are planes making clouds, and why don't you do something about that and the metals that are coming out of the jet exhaust? And I complained about biofuels and all that. Well, turns out we had the hearing. Then it said breaking EPA to limit greenhouse gases from airplanes. They were going to do something about it, but the Obama White House released the Federal Alternative Jet Fuel Research and Development Strategy. You can read that, biofuels. Alternative jet fuel or sustainable aviation fuel or just biofuels. China, US, and Europe pledge support for global aviation emissions pact. This is all, look how quick this happens. This is all before November, right here. July, September, October, November. That's when the election occurred. So during an election year, they got all this stuff in, and Greens moved to dismiss EPA lawsuit over airplanes emissions. So then after they sign their international agreements, they throw out the EPA hearing we just attended. And I told the Sierra Club guy, I said, what'd you think about that stuff I was saying over there? And the most pompous guy in the world, he's got on a tweed jacket with like, little elbow patches and everything. And he's just like, walks over to me. He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the cloud thing, dude. And he's like, that's just pure poppycock. I was like, in the biofuels, that's poppycock. I'm going to pop you in the, you know what? And of course, Max, had to grab me. This is Max, right? You're pretty big guy. He's like, back off, Jim. Don't fight, a stupid lawyer in the EPA building. Well, it turns out I was right. 2 years later, NGOs like the Sierra Club slammed the United Nations Aviation Agency plan for biofuels. I thought it was poppycock, but it's not. So even they admit that, it took them 2 years. I know they're slow, but even they came around and said, this is a bad idea, growing jet fuel. And you wonder why Bill Gates is buying up farmland everywhere. Makes sense now. That was me, 2015, stud. And this is, you can watch my entire speech on there, but I guess, I'm wrapping this up. So the real problem is this. When they're talking about whether it's the contrails created by planes or ship tracks created by international shipping, they always refer to it as accidental because it's from pollution. It's not on purpose. We didn't mean to do it. And that's how they get away with it. So when the International Maritime Organization went to ban bunker fuel, which is heavy fuel oil, which is bottom of the barrel in the refining process, you go from crude oil to heavy fuel oil, all the way up to kerosene, diesel, kerosene, gasoline. As you refine it, you remove impurities like the metals. So the higher up the chain you get, the more clean it is. Bunker fuel is bottom of the barrel. It's heavy fuel oil. That's what's creating these stripes in the sky you're seeing here. These are but covering the entire Pacific Ocean. So when they went to ban bunker fuel, MIT Technology Review threw a little fit and said, we're about to kill a massive accidental experiment in reducing global warming. That's rich. when Chuck Long from NOAA's Earth Systems Research Lab said, contrails are creating a subvisual ice haze, which we do not classify as a cloud, but is whitening the sky. The Smithsonian Magazine wrote the title, Airplane Contrails May Be Creating Accidental Geoengineering. So this isn't even up for debate at this point. Like, we know this is geoengineering. The idea of running on dirty, high sulfur fuel at cruising altitude, airplanes could add plenty of SO2, sulfur dioxide, to the stratosphere. That is occurring. If you go to climateviewer.com and you go to my chemtrail page, which I only have one right now, I'm about to make an entire website just devoted to this topic alone. You can see which metals are in the jet fuel by just clicking here, and they're all, listed on a periodic table, and you can see what metals are. And I love the fact that everybody always refers to these as heavy metals, when in fact none of these are heavy metals. Like, you don't know what a heavy metal is, dude. Like, I love Pantera. Okay, like, I get down with the sickness. I like that when the bodies hit the floor. That even some of that's not heavy metal. Okay, Pantera heavy metal. Okay, let's be real. But the point is, when you go across these boards, you can look at this, and then you can also look at what's called the magnetic periodic table, and it's way more informative to look at it from that perspective. Okay, lead's a heavy metal. Okay, it's about atomic weight. People need to be more educated when they use these words, and that's one of the things that I really focus on because it matters. So, what metals did they find when they actually sniffed the butt end of an aircraft on a runway while it was running? Chromium, iron, molybdenum, sodium, calcium, aluminum. Oh, there it is again. Aluminum. Vanadium, barium. There it is again. Cobalt, copper, nickel, lead, magnesium, manganese, silicon, titanium, zirconium. I didn't make this up. Abigailin et al. 2016 for all you scientists out there, or chemical characterization of freshly emitted particulate matter from aircraft exhaust using single particle mass spectrometry, which you can just right click, open, and see the paper and read the whole darn thing yourself. So I didn't make this up. Ulrich Lohmann's in on this. I know all these people at this point. Ulrich Schumann, Ulrich Lohmann, all the Ulrichs.
So let me get this straight. So basically, what these clouds are, just as a brief overview statement, is they're using basically garbage, cheap jet fuel that has all these metals in it, and it's creating.
They could be, but in reality, not all flights, not even a large portion at this point, are flying on biofuel. They've done many different biofuel tests. Some of these planes are flying on what they call drop-in fuel, meaning it could be up to 50%. It's a lot like the ethanol. There's a portion of it that may be biofuel. But by and large, in America, we fly on Jet A, and the rest of the world flies on Jet A1. And this is based on Jet A. So this was done, behind a plane, burning Jet A or Jet A1, not any biofuel.
So Jet A is dumping all of these metals onto the surface. You think they're reaching the surface, right? Because where else are they going to go? They're only going to go down, right?
Why else would we be finding it in our rain samples and all of that stuff, right? I mean, that's the part that makes sense, correct?
Yes.
And we're finding it all in the I was gonna see if I could find the global the use of jet fuel per year. But just to give you an idea, number of passenger flights per year. In 2004, there were 23.8 million flights yearly all around the world. By 2020, we were at 40.3 million flights per year. It's almost doubled. After COVID, I have the numbers. Right now in 2024, we were up to 45 billion million flights per year. Okay, so during COVID, we had this brief window where obviously there weren't a lot of flights. And there were actually studies done on that to see how the climate changed, how the weather changed when there were less flights. It's pretty remarkable. And I personally witnessed much cleaner skies during the whole COVID pandemic. Everybody was busy, looking at their feet or looking at how socially distanced they were. I was busy going, isn't it freaking beautiful? I thought it was amazing. And I live in South Carolina, so I wasn't affected by any of the COVID stuff. Nobody in my family took a vax. I made damn sure of it. And my kids went to a private Christian school. They opened on day one. They had no mask mandate, and nobody had a COVID case the entire school year. So
lucky.
I mean, South Carolina, Garden of Eden, come on down. Just don't bring your bad ideas with you. We will show you the door. So I didn't have to go through all that. But when you start to look at the numbers, it's really telling. I want to get this one, the passengers. I think this is it. Global flight. That's 1950 to present. Nah, that's that Grok thing. Yeah, the flight data is so hard to find.
Do you like Grok Deep Search or Chat GPT?
I like
Deep
Grok for deep search and think. I like Chat GPT for general shenanigans. But I like Gemini Pro 2.5, best coder in the world right now. Claude Sonnet 2.8 is pretty good at coding out of the box. So they all have their purpose. If you're looking for something news related that's happening like right this moment, Grok's where it's at, because all the other models, they get trained and then they get released. Grok, on the other hand, is constantly being updated by all of the users on X and everything they post, plus its training data, which is why XAI just bought X. Because now the new plan, and I can promise you this is my prediction. Nobody's ever told me this. I just know it's a fact. They will be training in real time as people upload data. So the thing is, the machine learning and the large language models will constantly be updated by the users. If the service is free, you are the product. That's the way social media works, guys. If it's free, you're the product. Your data, your digital self. But this chart really shows the chemtrail problem from 1945 all the way to present. So what do we see here? In 1997, the chemtrail conspiracy starts. 1.46 billion passengers worldwide. Huge uptick till 2000. And then we're at 1.7 billion. We're up to 2. We're up to 3 billion right here in 2012. And then by 2019, we're at 4.5 billion passengers. What else happened during that time? Well, let's think about it. Right about here, 2006, 2005, social media was invented. By 2007, many people had a camera in their back pocket. It's called a cell phone. So was it really that there were always blue skies? Because I was in high school from 1991 to 1995, where we're at hovering around 1 billion passengers worldwide. We're at 5 times that now. So really, when I look at all of the variables, when I look at the fact that I can predict when contrails occur simply by either reading a radio sign plot or clicking with the contrail finder and then seeing, oh, wait, in this area right now, this is what's called the Schmidt-Appelman criterion, and it tells you exactly at what height planes create contrails. This has been accurate since the 1940s. It's been revised somewhat, but right now what I have is high clouds turned on and the Contrail Finder plugin for windy.com. So I can come over here and I can check, and clearly if I click in this area, you're going to see minimal contrails may be seen at 32,000 feet, 31,000 feet, short possible, long possibly, persistent. These are the ones that fan out and turn into cirrus clouds. Every dot under that, so from 30,000 all the way down to 24,000 feet, this is an extremely low tropopause. It should be much higher. But right now, clearly in this area, the troposphere has been pushed down by the stratosphere, and the contrails are appearing at a much lower altitude. This also means that any planes flying above that in the stratosphere, they will not create contrails. What most people don't want to focus on, and I don't know why, is that if the plane makes clouds or not, this is still raining down on you. This is still coming out of the jet engine. This is the part I do not understand. So I want blue skies too. I want clouds to go away. But guess what? No contrails predicted right now in Kansas. Call your friends. If you're watching the live stream, call your friends in Kansas right now. Prove me wrong. I have broken more people's minds with this plugin alone. Because before I had this plugin, I would have to go to this and then look at what's called a skew-T plot. This is a radiosonde data. This is a weather balloon that goes up twice a day, and it measures the temperature on one side and the dew point depression on the other side. So in order for contrails to form, and especially for them to turn into cirrus clouds, the numbers have to be right. And right now, in Kansas, these are not right. They're too far apart. They're very far apart. Over here, they're really close together. Isn't that I'm a magician. I am a magician. When you see a dew point depression, and I told you that the troposphere was very low. I'm trying to like hover over the wrong screen. I'm on the StreamYard, not over here. But right here at about 30,000 feet, once you see that temperature, it's going down to negative 60, and then it goes 62, 61. It starts to go back up. It's actually warming up. That's where the stratosphere begins. It's as low as 27,000 feet right now in where is this? Grand Junction, Colorado. Meaning any plane flying above 27,000 feet in that area will not create a contrail. You get up to about right here, 30,000 feet where most planes are flying, 36,000 feet. I'm now at 36,000 feet. No contrails will form there, period. It's not that it's not a spray day. It's the atmospheric conditions are not right to create clouds. It's really that simple.
So we'll get this straight with our audience. So it's not pilots, commercial pilots, they get in their plane and they're like, all right, today's the day that I'm going to spray the population. It's not like that. It's this. It's just basically how the weather systems work and how it interacts with the jet fuel. Is that correct?
So it's kind of like, bro, do you even science? So like right here, I've got my contrail finder. If you want to do it, you just click on the menu, hit install Windy plugin right here, and you'll see all the plugins. You'll scroll down until you see contrail finder, hit install. Once it's installed, it'll just show up here on the side. I've already got the radiosondes turned on, which are all the way here at the very bottom. You can see radiosonde. So I turn that on, and then I go to clouds, and I turn on the clouds so I can see where they are. Now I've got all I need to know to just come around here and click and go, what about Denver? Very short window. Maybe in these two areas between 28,000 and 31,000 feet. All the other flights, probably not going to happen. Well, how many flights are in that area right now? If I go there right now, there's that many flights. I mean, there's that many flights, bro. So this is Denver International. All these flights are here. You can see their height right there. That's 37,000 feet. You can zoom in. You can actually read it. It's currently at 37,000 feet. They're color coded. So the website's literally idiot proof. They even have military flights on here. And this one's free. So I don't just use Flight Radar 24 and all the other ones. I like this one because I want to see where's my military planes at. And they show up on this website. So I can see, here's some Black Hawk helicopters. That's a C-17. I already know by the outline. It looks like a C-5 Galaxy, is it? That's a C-5 Galaxy. So you can go and actually see where the military planes are right now, where they came from, and what they're doing, and what altitude they're at. There's a C-17 Globemaster. That's a C-130 right there. That's a C-130. And, just bob around. Look at all the military planes flying around. Damn, that looks like a U-2. Is that no, it's a Beechcraft. Super King. Yeah, Beechcraft. All right, so
basically, it's the contrails, right? And everybody's gonna be like, oh, well, that's not true. There's spraying stuff. Well, yeah, they are. There are all these metals in the jet fuel, right? That's dissipating, and it is. So tell us, is it still interfering with our climate?
yes.
These contrails, not that the pilots are doing it intentionally, but it's still causing harm.
What if I told you somebody was trying to take advantage of the contrails? What if I told you it was also geoengineering, even though nobody ever had to flip a switch? How do I have proof of that? Well, like this. Jet exhaust in the stratosphere. The Indian Space Organization at the ISRO Vikram Sarabhi Space Center say they now have evidence of black carbon particles existing up to 18 kilometers. That's 60,000 feet. Just a quick reminder. Let me go to my little infographic. 60,000 feet. Oh, yeah, that's where stratospheric aerosol ejection is supposed to occur. Planes don't fly to 60,000 feet, Jim. How in the world did something get from here all the way up to here? Well, the answer is, let's go to that picture, that basically soot carries metal and sulfur into the stratosphere. That's how. The soot, the black carbon from here, somehow makes it up to here. Magic, fairy dust, engineered nanoparticles. David Keith, the geoengineer, said, photophoretic levitation of engineered nanoparticles. And he specifically talked about engineering a specific type of nanoparticle that would use photophoresis or self-levitation based on solar energy, light, heat, black. Black absorbs heat. Black goes up. We showed you the stratosphere. It gets warmer in the stratosphere. It gets drier in the stratosphere. These particles end up going up into the ozone layer for that matter. So when you look at all of this together, it's like, where's the other one? Let me go back here. So it goes like this. Incoming solar radiation. This is solar radiation management. The idea of reflecting sunlight back to space. But planes, when they create these clouds, they trap heat at the surface. This is now referred to as Earth radiation management. Not stratospheric aerosol injection, but another version of solar radiation management is called cirrus cloud thinning. This was in that Biden White House report that everybody referred to on solar radiation modification. It said, if people would have actually read it, instead of holding it up in your state legislature as proof of my geoengineering, if you would have read it, it said, we want to research 3 types of solar radiation management. They called it modification. Stratospheric aerosol injection, marine cloud brightening, and cirrus cloud thinning. It said SAI, MCB, and CCT. It's literally on the first page. But nobody even knows about this. So what the heck are they talking about? Ulrich Schumann, top scientist on contrail formation, he even revised the original Schmidt-Appelman criterion on how contrails form. That's how good this guy is. He said, we want less warming, more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. That word more right there, that's intent. In my brain, I hear the word more. It's not like it's just pollution now. That's somebody intentionally trying to get a desired outcome. Now, if you were to talk to them, they'd say, we're just doing climate mitigation. We're trying to mitigate the warming effects of cirrus clouds created by planes. But in reality, dude, you said more cooling contrails. While the entire world is outraged about planes making cirrus clouds, blocking out the sun, this guy has the cojones to say, I want more clouds during the day. Oh, what do you mean? I interviewed the guy who was doing the biofuels for contrail control. His name is Dr. Rangasai Halthori from FAA's Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative. When I asked him, what did Ulrich Schumann mean by less warming, more cooling contrails? At the head of the FAA, we would like to have more contrail-induced cirrus clouds during the day and none during the night. Well, that's interesting. Well, how are you going to pull that off? Ulrich Lohmann, I just mentioned her a little while ago, might be a him, I'm not sure. Blas Gasparini 2017, a cirrus cloud climate dial. How are they going to pull it off? This can be achieved if the seeding, cirrus cloud seeding, cirrus cloud thinning are the same thing. If cirrus cloud thinning is limited to high latitude winters and nighttime seeding. So they're literally talking about using chemicals like bismuth triiodide to melt away the cirrus clouds, the chemtrails that they made, if they happen at night. Why? They trap heat at night. They don't allow the heat that's at the ground to go back to space. So during the day, they do block some sun and reflect it back to space. They still trap heat during the day, but they really trap a lot of heat at night. So the idea of creating less warming, more cooling contrails during the day and none during the night, that's what's really going on. Don't believe me? You don't have to, because I can prove it. Contrail geoengineering, the conspiracy, real deal. Who's doing it? Bill Gates. Of course it's Bill Gates. It's always Bill Gates.
Always Bill Gates.
I mean, why would you doubt me on this? So I was on Del Bigtree's The High Wire. I told him the story about the two quotes that I just mentioned to you. And afterwards, a gentleman named George joined my Telegram channel. He said, Jim, I saw you on the High Wire. I'd already written this article. This was my first Substack. Way to come out and do your first Substack and really shake up everybody. Because I was so excited. I was so psyched about this. So geoengineering with contrails sounds counterproductive. I mean, most people would say contrails don't exist. Why are you saying geoengineering with contrails? That almost makes no sense at all to me. Well, in reality, that's exactly what's going on. And this is what they came up with their idea. The Greener by Design Contrail Avoidance Group, mitigating the climate impact of non-CO2 aviation's low-hanging fruit, 2021. In this little paper right here, you can see that I think there's actually, there'll be a slide in here, and that's probably why I linked to it. It's closer down to the bottom. But anyway, I'll find it real quick because I'm good at scanning these things. I think it is the last. There it is. So there it is. Let's get rid of that, and boom, and up here. All right, so what are they saying? Cooling contrails controversy. Avoiding warming contrails. These are contrail forming regions. I showed you them on the windy map. They're called ice supersaturated regions. They're basically water bodies in the sky. That's why sometimes you see the sprayers turn off and on, because all that's happening is the same chemicals are coming out of a plane, whether it's, making a cloud or not. But if it flies into water in the sky at the right temperature, it makes a cloud. So in order to avoid warming contrails, they can just go, well, you know what, here, dip down underneath that. and then climb rapidly through it. Now you're going to see somebody turn their sprayer on here, turn their sprayer off here, and then they're going to keep cruising. And everybody's none the wiser. They just think that somebody's in there flipping a switch. But creating cooling contrails, let's intentionally during the day fly into that ice supersaturated region to make clouds on purpose that aren't going to last all night. So it even shows right here, warming region, cooling region. Now, contrail avoidance group at first meeting split over forming cooling contrails. Is this geoengineering? Yes, it is. You know it is. Decide to sidestep the issue and form a governance subgroup. Recent work in the margins suggests that cooling contrails are worth investigating. Is this geoengineering? Yes, it is. So the point I'm trying to make is Bill Gates went and finally, I've been talking about this less warming, more cooling contrails since about 2012. And then I interviewed Dr. Angus Halthori in 2017. So and then I went on Del Bigtree's show. Then I brought this up, and then this happened. They created a website called, wait for it, contrails.org. And this is literally Bill Gates admitting everything right in your face. We can drastically cut aviation's climate impact by doing contrail avoidance. Because like Jim said in the infographic he made, we're going to make one ourselves and do the exact same thing. It does reflect some of the sun rays, but it traps heat at the ground, especially at night because it can't get out. It's a blanket in the sky. So what do? They create a contrail map. And what does this contrail map say on it? Cooling contrails, warming contrails. And you can see them right here. The red ones are warming. The blue ones are cooling. If that ain't geoengineering, I'll kiss your you-know-what. These are all the flights occurring, and they're modeling them in real time. Notice that it's nighttime. All nighttime contrails, cirrus clouds, are warming. The minute the sun comes back up, you'll see a mix of blue and red. Mostly blue here, but now it's already red, and it's still daytime. But some areas are blue. Some are cooling, some are warming. But the minute the sun goes down, guess what happens to them? Oh, back to red. So that's what it looks like in a day of contrails turning into cirrus clouds. This is right at sunset right here. As you can see, there's the sun's line. And you can see there's still a little bit of cooling, but everything that's not in, it's midnight. Those are cooling. Sun goes down. Now they're warming. They're trapping heat. They want them to go away. Look, they look like they're rapidly going away too. That's pretty interesting. So this is literally Bill Gates and Ken Caldera admitting the quiet part out loud. We do want to control when planes make clouds. We also know that jet fuel is ending up at 60,000 feet, and that is turning the sky white. I did show you that. Anyway, the Indian Space Organization found evidence of black carbon at 60,000 feet, and there were 10,000 black carbon particles per cubic centimeter. The only place it could come from was jet fuel. So we're in this real weird place where everybody's talking about chemtrails. I don't know any better way to describe it than this. Jet exhaust is a chemical trail. What is a contrail? It's a condensation trail. Why do people say it's just harmless water vapor when you cannot have condensation on itself? That would be called homogeneous condensation. That happens in aerodynamic contrails to some extent. But when you're talking about jet exhaust, the condensation or condense, it condenses on soot. That's how all clouds in the world, natural and artificial, are made. It has a cloud condensation nuclei. CCM. There is a nucleus, a cloud seed in the middle that water condenses on. And if it gets heavy enough, it turns into rain or snow. because it can no longer stay up in the air. It falls on the ground.
So
That's basic.
contrail induced cirrus clouds are not because of a nozzle, not because of a button. They're because of jet fuel, but they're still intentionally being used for geoengineering. Is that correct?
Right now, it's a complete uncontrolled mess. What they're trying to do is Google AI is partnered with Breakthrough Energy. Breakthrough Energy is owned by Bill Gates. Bill Gates' chief scientist is Ken Caldera, geoengineer, and they are putting this whole contrail avoidance scheme together, basically to help the airline industry out because they're going to have to pay all kinds of carbon taxes. The carbon cult is coming for them. So either they're going to have to pay a bunch of carbon taxes, which means that flights are going to double, triple in price or whatever, because, they always pass the buck. Or they can actually figure out contrail avoidance and make cooling contrails. And then they'll be able to appease the climate gods and say, no, now instead of paying carbon taxes, we want carbon offsets. We want carbon credits. We're part of the solution. We are your geoengineering pollution solution. We make clouds that cool the planet. So even though we fart a bunch of CO2 out, we make clouds that cool the planet. That's what Bill Gates is up to here. That's why Google AI is involved. They are all trying to now model a very complex weather system to be able to model in real time where these ice supersaturated regions are. Will they be warming or will they be cooling? Should we avoid them or should we fly into them? Right now, that experiment's going on. It is an uncontrolled experiment by and large right now. They don't have a clue. Planes don't really care. They just flying. Planes going to fly. Trolls going to troll. People are going to fly places. Guess what? If you're on a short haul flight, you're part of the problem. You literally are paying for it. I'm not trying to sound like a WEFer over here that's down with Agenda 2030 or, this, a lot of people will say, well, he's just making this argument because, that's exactly what the WEF and the Agenda, 20 net zero 2050 and all this, they're going to price you out of being able to fly. No. But be realistic. If you bought something off of Amazon and they got to fly it in a plane, and then you're going to bitch about the plane making clouds in your sky, you're part of the problem. Facts don't care about your feelings. I'm not paid by anybody. I do everything I can to educate people on these topics. And then everything on my website's for free. And at the end of the day, I've been called every name in the book. It does not change the fact that I'm right. And this drives people in the chemtrail community crazy. Bonkers even. Now, that does not mean that there is not a secret government program going on to geoengineer the whole world. Here's the problem with that argument, though, is that if you really want to get into it, I'll get into it with you, but I'm just going to warn you in advance. You might want to know a little bit about what you're talking about, because how many planes does it take to geoengineer the planet? That's the first question I'm going to ask you. And I will openly debate anybody on the planet. I've said this for the last 10, 15 years. Only 2 people have ever tried. Didn't go well for either of them. But if you want to come on my YouTube and debate this, I'll be happy to. But know that you're going to end up having to answer this one, guys. When Bill Gates asked David Keith in 2010, how many planes do you need to geoengineer the planet, David? David said, I could geoengineer the entire planet with 14 Boeing 747-400s. So let me get this straight. I just showed you that we had 45 million flights last year, not counting military flights. That's just commercial, cargo, and freight. 14 million flights on average, over 100,000 flights per day. I showed you how many planes are in the air. We're talking right now, it's 8:21 p.m. on the East Coast in Sumter, South Carolina. That many planes are in the air. It covers the entire map. You can't even see the ground. But he says, I can geoengineer the planet with 133 F-15 Eagle fighter planes. I can do it with 66 private business jets. I can do it with 24 C-17 Globemasters, or I can do it with 28 B-1B Rockwell bombers. Let's be ridiculous. Let's just add a zero. Let's say there's 1,300 planes. There's 100,000 flights today. How many of the flights were geoengineering flights? Don't be ridiculous either with your answer, because you know that this does not compute. In order to geoengineer the entire planet, it can be done with 14 planes. This has been reiterated over and over again. This is not the first. This is not the last. I have like 5 different versions of this. Cost analysis of stratospheric albedo modification delivery systems. This is Justin McClellan on behalf of David Keith and Aurora Flight Sciences, which it says right here. There's David Keith, just so you know, and Aurora Flight Sciences, like I said. So they did the original study in 2010. This was published in 2012. I have the original study as well. If you would like to see the graphics from it, don't make me do it. Don't even dare me. But yeah, all of this, you look at it and you go, well, they can do this, determining the Boeing 747 conversion cost for the Civil Reserve Air Fleet Enhancement Program to convert a 747 into a geoengineering plane using the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. That's exactly what he said right here. Like in the actual paper that we were just looking at, when you look at it, there's a star right underneath it. It literally says B right there. Modification cost $30.5 million. B says U.S. Civil Reserve Fleet passenger jet to cargo conversion cost. I've done all the homework on this. Like, when all the geoengineers, in order to fly up to 60 to 90,000 feet, just a quick reminder for anybody who's forgotten, to fly up to 60 to 90,000 feet, no plane can carry that amount of chemicals up there today. There's only a handful of planes in the world can even go up there, and to put 10 megatons to 100 megatons worth of sulfur, aluminum, titanium, calcium, or diamond dust into the stratosphere at that height at the equator, both south and north part of the equator, because you want it to evenly distribute to the poles, you would have to heavily modify a fleet of planes. And they say every time they're asked, between 14 to 16 big ass planes. But we're focused on looking for the needle and ignoring the haystack. That's what we keep doing. And I don't understand why. I guess it's more fun. I do understand the argument. I understand the history. At the end of the day, the CIA did weather warfare in Vietnam. The CIA did weather warfare over Cuba. The CIA is probably doing weather warfare over Iran right now because they keep on complaining about it. The CIA, John Brennan, talked to the Council on Foreign Relations about stratospheric aerosol injection. The CIA gave $630,000 to the climate intervention studies in 2016. The CIA asked Alan Robach, a geoengineer, if another country was geoengineering over America, would we know about it? And Alan responded, no, yeah, I think we would. But at the same time, I felt like the 2 CIA agents were asking me if we were geoengineering over another country, would they know about it? So I'm willing to concede, and I think it's more than likely probable that the CIA is involved in geoengineering. But let's be real about it. Let's be realistic. In order to whiten the sky, not create clouds, because geoengineering is about whitening the sky, turning it all white, not this, deep blue we used to know. It's that milky white horizon you see. That is geoengineering stratospheric aerosol injection, not clouds. Clouds are short term, they're very temporary. Geoengineering at 60 to 90,000 feet, that can last like 3 to 4 years, bro. One deployment before it finally makes it down to the ground. Doing it at 45,000 feet and it raising up to 60,000 feet, we're talking about 1 year to 2 years. The clouds at the cloud level where planes are flying, the exhaust particles that are coming out, if they're in the troposphere, 1 week to 2 weeks max before they hit the ground. As little as 2 days, in fact, in certain very turbulent cases. So we go from 2 weeks max in the troposphere where we're seeing these planes making these clouds, and the ones that are going into the stratosphere, we're talking anywhere from 2 weeks to like 2 months. Generally speaking, it's the lower stratosphere. But once you get up to those higher parts of the stratosphere, 14 planes could geoengineer the planet. It would take them 1, maybe 2 days. And those chemicals would stay up there for 2 to 4 years.
Wow. Well, Jim, you have presented us with basically chemtrail geoengineering 101 here. There's so much little details that go into this whole area that it's absolutely crazy, and people do have to get it right. And honestly, I think you're absolutely correct in what you've done and all the analysis you've done. It 100% checks out. Now, Jim, is there anything you want to say to our audience before we close out here today?
I want to encourage everybody who, right now in the 25 states that are trying to pass laws to ban geoengineering and weather modification, I'm not here to mock you. I'm rooting for you. I'm also want to be realistic with you. You can ban cloud seeding, you can ban weather modification in a state, and a state can enforce it. Good. You can ban geoengineering in a state. A state cannot enforce it. Mexico, the entire country, banned geoengineering. Can they enforce that geoengineering ban? If America decided to geoengineer the planet, if China did or Russia did, if a small group of dudes from Israel called Stardust Labs, if they decided to do it because somebody hired them to do it, it's a worldwide problem instantaneously. How are you going to enforce that ban in Tennessee or Florida? How are you going to enforce it in Mexico? You going to throw burritos at the planes? Let's be realistic. The only way to stop geoengineering, intentional geoengineering from specially designed planes with pumps and pipes to do geoengineering stratospheric aerosol injection is for the federal government, both House and Senate, to pass a law saying geoengineering would be considered a violation of the Environmental Modification Convention Treaty, the Weather Warfare Ban of 1976. And if you violate that ban, you're going to be on the business end of a missile by tomorrow. The only way to enforce any type of ban is with the threat of force. States cannot threaten force against any plane traveling over its borders. They are banned by the Federal Supremacy Clause. They are not protected by the 10th Amendment on this one. The Federal Aviation Act says no state shall impede interstate commerce as it pertains to aircraft. And the Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Air Act says no state shall create emissions regulations that do not match those of the EPA. So states cannot write laws that say planes cannot fart out metals. They also can't write laws that say planes can't create clouds. So while I still encourage everybody, you may not understand all the terms, you may not understand what, how how legally, what the legalese and the science, tech bros come up with the terms like aviation induced cloudiness, contrail induced cirrus, persistent contrails. You may not even believe contrails are real. You may think that I'm a CIA shill. That's fine. I do not care. What I do care about is people are well intended right now and they're fed up. They're trying to get laws passed and they're hoping it's going to change their skies. When it doesn't, who do they call? This guy. They call me and they go, what do we do next? And what we do next is we got to take it to the federal level. We really have to recognize this is a federal problem. And at the federal level is the only way you can deal with geoengineering. It's the only way you can deal with planes making clouds, pollution, intentional or not. So once you understand that, then you'll be on the path to actually dealing with the problem. Everything else is virtue signaling. And I'm all for it because I think that the more states pass geoengineering bans, the more likely the federal senators and House of Representatives are likely to go, the will of the people is they really don't like geoengineering. Maybe we should listen. So let's try to get all 50 states, hell, 51. Let's get them all to ban geoengineering. And then once we've done that and the clouds haven't gone away and you realize I was right, it's time to then march on Washington and say, ban geoengineering forever. That's the solution. I will be here when that happens because I'm 48 years old. I've been doing this 20 years. I'm going to do this till it's done. And I will be here to remind you, I was right in 2013. And now eventually you're going to figure it out. And for all the people that are rooting for me to just shut up and go away so they can make their money off their clickbait, farming videos they make, fine, keep doing it. Eventually you're all going to be eating crow. Or because everybody's been so focused on this chemtrail narrative of fear porn, they're going to actually get away with legalizing geoengineering and deploying it on a worldwide scale. And I'm going to become furious, not with the people who did it, but with all the people who lied along the way and made money off of their fear porn and made it possible for this to happen. So know that my job is to educate the public, but it's also to criticize anybody who dares even talk about this subject, because if you do, you're screwing with my ability to get my job done. And my job is to end geoengineering and weather modification, but more important than anything, end the legalization of geoengineering, which is right now going on at the United Nations Environmental Assemblies and the past two UN assemblies. They tried to pass geoengineering governance. By 2029, David Key said that he would try to start a small-scale geoengineering project worldwide using 14 Gulfstream private jets. He may not get his 747s, but there's that number again. 14 private jets, 14 747s. We cannot allow this to happen. And the only way it's going to happen is if people refuse to get educated, or you just go, la, 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 la. Contrails are not real. La, 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 la. I don't want to understand any of this. Blah, 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 blah. That dude's a CIA agent, shill, gatekeeper, and all that. Okay. If we don't have this discussion and we don't grow up real quick and take this very seriously, not only is there going to be planes making clouds in your sky, but they're going to be actual scientists and defense contractors blocking out the sun. And the effects of that during a grand solar minimum, we're one volcanic eruption away from a freaking mini ice age. And then we'll all find out what depopulation really looks like.
Wow, Jim. Well, those are powerful last words. That's a whole nother topic for another show. But again, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I think our audience is very much going to enjoy this.
I appreciate it, Nicholas, man. It's been a great talking with you. I mean, we almost talked as long as we did during the show before the show. But I appreciate you having me, man, and thank you for letting me talk about this. This is something I'm very passionate about because I have two daughters, and I don't want them to grow up in a world where their children's children can't see the stars because some technocrat decided I want to block out the sun because my polar bears, because my CO2s. It's just stupid. Anyway, check out my stuff, connect.climateviewer.com. I'd love to hear you in the Telegram chat. If you've got questions, come in there. My admins are some of the most educated people on the planet on this subject. I wouldn't have made them admins otherwise. Most of the people in the Telegram chat, they're extremely bright. They're very well educated. They will help you in your learning process. And sign up for my Substack because that's where all my new newsletters, like when something's breaking, it's coming out on my Substack and it gets delivered to your inbox free of charge. And if you want to support what I'm doing, think about becoming a paid subscriber. Other than that, I'm going to keep on doing this one way or another till it's done, till I can literally come on here and go, we did it. Everything is banned. Now I'm going to play Call of Duty.
All right, awesome. Yeah, you heard it. Everybody, please go follow him on his channels, and it's also going to be posted in the show notes. Thank you again, Jim. It was great.